I am prepping a broccoli casserole for tonight's dinner, and we're going to attempt a vegan cheese in just a little bit. But I am realizing that I have shared that I've been diagnosed with hEDS, and I haven't given any context about what that is. And like a lot of information is on YouTube, like a lot of the general information, like how there's like no gene for it, how the diagnostic ways in which they would test. Like one example is if you can bring your thumb down to your wrist, like apparently you're not supposed to be able to do that. Different things like how far back you can reach and reach up, your elbows, like see this would be normal but mine go up, so normal and up. Same thing with your knees, same thing being able to touch the ground with your hands flat. There's a variation of criteria that is used because there isn't a gene, and a lot of it is like based on the care provider. A lot of it can be suggestive, so it's ideal if they use a variation of criteria. And really, I think in me sharing, there isn't really the urgency into like go and get a diagnosis if your life is fine. Like if your life is manageable and you have a good routine and all of that. It's more of like the awareness to have for if you get injured, or for women if you start to have babies. Like I look back at my pregnancy and birthing and nursing journey, and I can see how my hypermobility, my hEDS, like played a huge part in things. And because I'm just so quick to blame myself for everything, like I minimize so many of my experiences. One of which is like how I took way longer to heal after each birth, and then longer after each subsequent birth because I had my children so close together, which if somebody's aware that they have hEDS, maybe they would be able to then plan better and have more of a gap in between children. But in my mind it was just like, oh well, I must be doing something wrong, you know, I'm not resting enough, I'm doing too much, and therefore that's why I'm taking longer to heal. It would blow my mind how like women would say they would just be like healed and like ready to go on with life like 6 to 8 weeks after birth, and I was like, dang, like I must just be like really weak and like really doing something wrong because I need a good like 12 weeks, 16 weeks. And like that can be really confusing, especially because if you've known me for a while, like I dove into a lot of birth knowledge, like pregnancy birth knowledge, and I always felt like in the variation of normal, like on this side of the spectrum though, and so which is good on one hand because I didn't pathologize myself, but also it minimized a lot of my experiences. And so healing is one of them. If you are aware that you have hEDS, then you can be aware that you're going to need more time for healing, and you can plan for that. Another thing is, and if you're a man, you may want to scroll, but if not, because maybe you can help a woman in your life. So all 3 of my children had tongue ties, like very severe tongue ties, yet I never had any horrible pain while nursing, and I never had like any horrible like blisters or anything like that, and that never made sense to me. Like it really didn't. Like as much as I knew about nursing and like breastfeeding and like pregnancy and birth and all of that, like this never made sense to me. Like how do my children have like severe tongue ties and lip ties and I'm not experiencing any pain? Like that just, it confused me. And well, like the basis of hEDS is that a person has issues with their connective tissue, with their collagen production, and so your joints are going to move more than the normal person, and your skin is going to be more stretchy than the normal person. See? Okay, your skin's gonna be more stretchy. Okay, your skin is right here as well, and so my body was just able to adapt to their inability to properly suckle at the breast until their revisions. So now that makes sense. So there's a lot of things that can help a person navigate their life more mindfully without just feeling like they're failing at everything, and know how to support their body in the different ways. If, for example, if it's a woman during her childbearing years, because informed consent is like my biggest thing. Informed consent, and like maybe that's why this was like just in my heart so important all of these years, because maybe my soul somewhere deep down knew like that this needed to be found out, because informed consent is everything. And with something like this, like my body, like somebody's body with hEDS functions very differently than another person's, and having this understanding can then allow a person to make informed decisions, and that is huge. So that's just a little bit of what I'm like. It's like the pieces are starting to come together and things are starting to make sense. There's also what they would call like comorbidities. You know what I mean. Things like POTS, like, you know, like if you bend over and you get dizzy, and like that happens to me all the time, has my whole life, and it's just like, oh, like is something seriously wrong, or did I not drink enough water, or is it too hot, or is it this? Like, no, like now I just know it's a part of my body, and now I could just like stand there and like, you know, get undizzy for a second. Things like the fact that growing up, like my hips always pop, and like I could pop them in and out, and like it's nothing drastic, but like my hips just like they would get stuck, and I'd have to like lean. I don't know if you could hear that, but you could hear that one. But like they pop. Like your hips shouldn't like pop like that all the time. And again, like as now that I have this information, like I'm not getting any younger, and so I can now have this information and know that it's like extra important to support my hips and my knees and like all of these things. Like this not something that I have the ability to just like think is not of high importance, because I, you know, don't want to have a hip out and need a hip replacement at like, I don't know what the normal age is, but I don't want to have it at like 45 or something like that. And so having this information, I can better support my body in the today and in the long run. And so that's why it's very important for me to share the experience that I've had, and not only like all of those things that make more sense now as I look back over my life, but also like the fact that I did have this injury and the trauma that played out for 6 months before somebody was able to look at me and be like, oh, like you have hEDS. And then everything made sense, because no person deserves to have to go through multiple ERs and multiple doctors and be in birth-like pain for 6 months and essentially being told that they're crazy and that there's no reason for it, and because there's no reason for it, there's no way to help the person, and like no person should ever have to go through that. And so if you think that you have hEDS but you're like living life fine, then cool, like you don't have to rush out for diagnoses, but like you can keep it tucked in the back of your head so that if you sprain your ankle, like you know to give it a little bit longer or whatnot. Like for example, this injury here at the cartilage of the sternum and rib, I'd have to double check, but I think it was like it normally needs like 3 to 6 months. I think 3 months to heal. I can double check. So for a person like me, like I needed 6 months for it to heal, and of course that is just mind-blowing, especially because I had little children at the time. But now I can look back and like let go of so much self-blame, like, oh, I wasn't doing this enough, and I wasn't doing this enough, and I did this wrong, and like, no, my body just needed more time. Like there was no way around it. My body just needed more time, and being that this joint is at the center of every movement, like that's a hard thing to allow to heal in that amount, with that amount of time needed. So that's just a tidbit. And a lot of this, a lot of the info can be found on YouTube if you're curious for yourself or for a loved one, or if you're a healthcare professional and like a chiropractor or something like that. And yeah, because I did go to a chiropractor when I had the injury, and I went to her quite a few times, and I feel like if she would have had this knowledge in her back pocket, then she would have been able to identify it, because like she couldn't figure out, like, why do you have to keep coming in here for your rib popping out of place, like what's going on here? And so this information could really change lives. It could really change what a person has to endure in order to get the information that they need and the help that they need. So there's my little tidbits.